war with shadows.
Local villages. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
John Rambo's journey in this imagined chapter begins far from the echo of conflict, in a landscape where silence carries more weight than any weapon he has ever lifted. He lives in the rugged outskirts of northern Arizona, in land that feels untouched, timeless, and almost harsh in its indifference to human presence. His days are defined by the rhythm of physical labor and the solitude of survival, and though the world might assume he is at peace, the truth is that Rambo has never fully escaped the war he carries inside him. The ghosts of his past are countless, and in moments when the world quiets, the sounds of every battlefield he's walked through return to him like distant fires burning just beyond the horizon. He tries to bury his trauma beneath repetition, feeding horses, repairing fences, restoring old structures, or walking through the desert as the sun bleeds into the skyline. But when night falls, the memories return, not as mere recollections but as living, breathing forces that shape the way he moves, thinks, and sleeps. He has lived long enough to know that peace, for him, is only a temporary visitor. Then one afternoon, his world shifts when a black SUV kicks up dust down the old dirt road leading to his isolated property. Rambo is instinctively alert, gripping the rifle he keeps hidden behind the barn door. But as the SUV stops and the figure steps out, he recognizes the military posture before he sees the face. It is Major Helena Briggs, a strategist whose reputation within covert operations is carved from precision and cold resolve. She is younger than Rambo yet carries an air of experience etched into her eyes, the look of someone who has seen the consequences of international power games and the unseen battles fought in the shadows. She approaches him not with hostility, but with the unmistakable gravity of a mission that comes with impossible stakes. Briggs explains that a Black Ops reconnaissance unit deployed in Myanmar has disappeared without a trace. Their target was a rising paramilitary organization known as the Serpent Dawn, a syndicate built by Kyan Thura, a former general whose brilliance on the battlefield was matched only by his brutality. After being stripped of his military standing, Thura built a shadow empire across the border regions, kidnapping civilians, smuggling weapons, and destabilizing governments. His power has grown quietly for years, shielded by geography, corruption, and a network of fanatics loyal to him. Now he holds several American operatives hostage, including Michael Coe, the son of one of Rambo's closest brothers-in-arms from Vietnam. The moment Rambo hears the name, something inside him fractures. He remembers Michael's father vividly, the long nights in the jungle, the firefights where seconds decided who lived and who didn't, the way soldiers created families out of survival. Rambo never had children, but every soldier he fought beside him printed on him like blood ties. The idea that the son of one of those brothers is now captured, possibly tortured, and facing execution lights a storm inside him. Briggs tells him that Michael had grown up hearing stories about Rambo, the legendary protector, the ghost of the battlefield, the man who refused to leave anyone behind. Rambo does not want to be anyone's hero anymore, but hearing that Michael looked up to him feels like a responsibility heavier than any weapon he has lifted. Briggs tells him that the government is debating abandoning the mission, writing the unit off as lost. Rambo realizes that if he does nothing, the world will move on, and every hostage will die in a forgotten corner of the jungle. Haunted by a sense of obligation, and driven by a need to protect the legacy of the fallen, Rambo leaves his sanctuary and returns to a world he hoped he had left behind. He travels with Briggs to Southeast Asia. The region is humid, dense, and alive with the sounds of insects and distant drums, a stark contrast to the quiet deserts of Arizona. For Rambo, the jungle stirs memories he tried to bury decades ago. Every vine, every echo, every beam of light filtering through the canopy reminds him of Vietnam, the mud, the chaos, the screams of dying brothers. It is not nostalgia, it is a wound being reopened. Briggs introduces him to Aimin, a young resistance fighter whose family was taken by the Serpent Dawn. She is fearless, fueled by righteous anger, and possesses intimate knowledge of the terrain. Her motivations align with Rambo's, though she carries the pain of uncertainty. she does not know if her parents are alive or dead, only that she must keep fighting. Rambo sees something of himself in her, someone shaped not by choice but by necessity. Their journey through the jungle becomes a psychological crucible. Rambo relives scenes from his past, from ambushes where he watched comrades fall to the feeling of being hunted by unseen enemies. Briggs encourages him to think tactically, to see the mission through modern intelligence frameworks, but Rambo relies on instinct, the guttural, primal survival sense honed by decades of war. He teaches the team to move silently, to blend with the environment, to anticipate traps. In one tense sequence, the group discovers a mass grave filled with victims of the Serpent Dawn, confirming the scale of Thura's cruelty. It fuels Rambo's determination, pushing him deeper into a mission that feels not only like a rescue but like a reckoning. As they infiltrate the Serpent Dawn's territory, they uncover the organization's horrifying structure. Thura has built a multi-layered network of prison camps, weapon storage facilities, and underground trafficking tunnels stretching for miles. He uses hostages as human shields and propaganda tools, planning to frame the United States for an international incident by broadcasting manipulated footage of tortured captives. His goal is to trigger geopolitical instability, forcing powerful nations to retaliate, and opening black market opportunities for his syndicate. Rambo realizes this is not just a rescue mission, it's a bomb waiting to explode across the global stage. The team's first infiltration attempt results in a brutal confrontation. Rambo uses explosive traps, handcrafted snares, and improvised weaponry to eliminate patrols. His body moves with a mixture of pain and deadly efficiency. He is older now, slower in some ways, but more cunning, more ruthless. Every blow is deliberate. He does not fight out of rage but out of necessity, understanding that hesitation means death. They eventually locate intelligence that confirms Michael Coe is alive but heavily guarded in the central stronghold, a massive jungle fortress built from concrete, steel, and stolen military equipment. It is defended by hundreds of Thura's soldiers, trained in guerrilla warfare and conditioned to obey without question. The stronghold is designed like a labyrinth, with underground tunnels, watchtowers, sniper nests, and fortified walls. It is almost impenetrable. Almost. Rambo begins constructing a plan that blends sabotage, psychological warfare, and pure force. He uses the environment itself as a weapon, rigging trees with explosives, carving hidden pathways, and creating bottlenecks to force enemy troops into narrow kill zones. Briggs coordinates aerial mapping and communication jamming, while Imin recruits local fighters who have suffered under Thura's tyranny. As the tension tightens, Rambo has a moment of reflection with Michael's dog tags, which Briggs gives him after finding them in confiscated belongings. Rambo stares at the metal, remembering the way soldiers used to hold on to these tags as a reminder of who they were fighting for. He realizes he is not just saving a young man, he is fighting for the memory of an entire generation of soldiers who never returned. The final assault begins under the cover of a storm. Rain pours over the jungle like a cleansing fury as thunder rolls across the sky, masking the sound of approaching footsteps. Rambo leads the charge, eliminating guards with knives, arrows, and explosives. His team follows, each step bringing them closer to the heart of darkness. They move through prison chambers filled with emaciated hostages, each rescued hostage strengthening their resolve. When they finally reach Michael, he is weak but alive, held in a steel cage surrounded by elite guards. Rambo confronts Cayenne Thura in a savage battle, where both men represent opposite philosophies, one shaped by honor, loyalty, and sacrifice, the other driven by dominance, cruelty, and power. The fight is brutal, raw, and uncomfortably intimate. Rambo is wounded multiple times but pushes forward with a determination forged through decades of survival. In the end, he defeats Thura, ending the tyrant's reign and freeing the hostages. But the cost is heavy. Rambo suffers severe injuries during the escape. He collapses as explosions from the fortress shake the ground, and the jungle around them begins to burn. Michael insists on helping him, refusing to leave him behind, mirroring the loyalty Rambo once showed his own brothers. Briggs calls for evacuation, but Rambo resists, saying he's done enough, that he wants the younger generation to live the lives his generation never could. Yet Michael refuses. He tells Rambo that heroism is not about surviving, it is about choosing to stand with someone, even when it's hard. For the first time in decades, Rambo allows others to carry him. He allows himself to be part of something larger than the grief that has consumed him for so long. The epilogue offers a quieter, more reflective tone. Rambo recovers in a remote safe house, surrounded not by soldiers but by people who genuinely care about him. He is older, injured, and weary, but something inside him has shifted. He sees glimpses of young soldiers training, preparing for futures he helped protect. He reflects on the families reunited because of their mission, the hostages rescued, the resistance fighters rebuilding their villages. It is the closure he never expected, not a peaceful ending, but a meaningful one. The film's imagined production design supports this emotional journey with sweeping jungles, intimate close-ups, and large-scale warfare sequences grounded in practical effects. The choreography blends tactical realism with symbolic weight, making each confrontation feel like a step deeper into Rambo's psyche. The score, built around aching strings and traditional Southeast Asian instruments, creates an atmosphere where action and emotion intertwine. The cinematography uses natural lighting, heavy shadows, and wide panoramic shots to contrast Rambo's isolation with the vastness of the world he is trying to protect. Thematically, the story explores redemption, legacy, trauma, responsibility, and the question of whether a warrior can ever truly lay down his burdens. It speaks to the cost of survival, the lingering wounds of war, and the idea that family can be found even in the darkest corners of the world. Rambo's journey is no longer about fighting battles, it is about finding meaning in the aftermath. Everything builds toward the understanding that this is not just another mission. It is the culmination of a lifetime of sacrifice, struggle, and resilience. It is the final chapter of a man who tried to outrun war but ultimately found purpose in protecting those who could not protect themselves. And through the rescue of Michael Coe, through the destruction of the Serpent Dawn, and through the relationships forged along the way, Rambo discovers something he never allowed himself to believe he deserved, a chance to rest. John Rambo wakes in the first light of morning, the desert wind cutting through the broken shutters of his small cabin, carrying with it the faint smell of sage and dust. His hands, scarred and calloused from years of survival, move methodically as he feeds the horses, checking each for injuries, for signs of weakness. Each creature relies on him entirely, and in their dependence, he finds a sliver of purpose he thought lost. The land stretches endlessly, jagged cliffs and scrubby valleys painting a picture of isolation, yet it is a kind of sanctuary. Here, he is not a soldier, not a weapon, not a symbol of forgotten wars. Here, he is simply alive, accountable only to the rhythm of the earth and the quiet demands of life. But even in these moments of calm, the past whispers through his mind. Memories of jungles, of gunfire and blood, of comrades he could not save, drift unbidden, haunting the edges of his consciousness. They are not memories so much as scars, reminders that a man shaped by war cannot easily escape it. The sudden roar of an engine breaks the stillness. Dust rises in the distance, announcing the arrival of a figure from a world Rambo had believed long behind him. Major Helena Briggs steps from the vehicle, her posture precise, her eyes scanning the horizon with the trained awareness of someone accustomed to danger. She carries with her the weight of unspoken missions, classified operations, and impossible decisions, the sort that leave permanent marks on those who bear them. When she speaks, her voice is calm but firm, a signal that the information she carries is not a request but an imperative. The conversation that follows is terse, yet its implications are immense. A unit of U.S. operatives has vanished in Myanmar, captured by a powerful and ruthless paramilitary force, and among them is the son of one of Rambo's oldest brothers-in-arms. The revelation strikes a chord deep within him. He knows the rules of survival, the choices men make in war, but the blood tie, even indirect, cannot be ignored. It pulls him back into a world he had sworn to leave behind. Rambo's decision to act is not immediate. He resists at first, the weight of age and accumulated trauma urging him to remain in solitude, to let others handle the fight. Yet the knowledge of Michael Coe, young and vulnerable, relying on legends of Rambo's past heroism, stirs a moral fire that cannot be extinguished. He agrees, silently acknowledging that the ghosts of the past do not rest and that perhaps he, too, has unfinished business. This mission is not simply about saving a life, it is about preserving the memory of those who have fallen, honoring bonds forged in the crucible of war, and confronting the consequences of decades spent in battle. As he leaves the arid comfort of Arizona, the horizon behind him becomes a metaphorical severing of the quiet he had hoped to maintain. Arriving in Southeast Asia, Rambo is immediately immersed in a landscape both foreign and familiar. The jungle is thick, vibrant, and dangerous, each movement accompanied by the hum of insects, the distant cries of animals, and the ever-present tension of unseen threats. It is a place where survival demands instinct honed by years of experience, a reminder that nature can be as merciless as any human enemy. Briggs introduces him to Imin, a fierce local resistance fighter whose family has suffered under the Serpent Dawn's tyranny. She moves through the dense foliage with an ease born of necessity, her eyes sharp, her movements deliberate. Together, they navigate a network of trails, river crossings, and hidden passages, each step a calculated negotiation with the environment. Every decision carries risk, every misstep can be fatal. In this context, Rambo's skills, long dormant, resurface with uncanny precision, guiding the team as they move toward their objective. The mission evolves into a complex interplay of strategy, stealth, and psychological warfare. Rambo observes patterns of patrols, studies the terrain, and anticipates the enemy's moves with a near-prescient understanding. His actions are measured, deliberate, and informed by decades of experience, contrasting with the youthful impulsiveness of his companions. Despite his expertise, the jungle presses on him, memories of past conflicts merging with the immediate dangers they face. Each encounter with the Serpent Dawn forces Rambo to confront not only the physical threat but the emotional weight of the violence he unleashes. It is a reminder that combat leaves marks not easily erased, that every life taken carries consequences that ripple outward, touching the world in unforeseen ways. Their reconnaissance uncovers the scale of Thura's operations. The fortress he commands is vast, fortified with multiple layers of defense, underground tunnels, and strategically placed outposts. The stronghold is both a physical and symbolic manifestation of his power, designed to intimidate and control. Hostages are kept in conditions designed to break them, each prisoner a tool for propaganda and leverage. Rambo recognizes the stakes, failure is not an option, and the margin for error is non-existent. His approach blends tactical precision with instinctual improvisation, using the environment to his advantage. Trees become barriers, rivers conceal movements, and shadows provide cover. Each step is a negotiation with life and death, a dance where one miscalculation can lead to catastrophe. As the team penetrates deeper into enemy territory, Rambo's connection to Michael Coe becomes more than a sense of duty, it becomes a personal anchor. He recalls the stories told by Michael's father, the lessons of courage, loyalty, and sacrifice imparted to the next generation. These recollections provide both motivation and a haunting reminder of the passage of time, of lives once vibrant now reduced to memory. In moments of quiet between engagements, Rambo reflects on the cycle of war and the responsibilities that outlive it. The mission is no longer solely about rescue, it is about confronting the moral imperatives that define a lifetime of combat, about ensuring that sacrifice has meaning beyond survival. The culmination of their efforts occurs in the storm-laden climax. Rain lashes the jungle, turning paths into quagmires, streams into torrents, and shadows into shifting specters of danger. The assault on the fortress is methodical, utilizing diversions, improvised traps, and coordinated strikes to dismantle defenses. Rambo moves with relentless focus, each action precise, driven not by vengeance but by the imperative to save lives. The confrontation with Cayenne Thura is the apex of this journey, a collision of ideologies and skill, a test of endurance, cunning, and moral clarity. Thura embodies unchecked ambition, cruelty, and the corruption of power, while Rambo represents experience tempered by responsibility, strength guided by conscience, and the enduring weight of human connection. The battle is brutal and intimate, echoing the relentless tension of a lifetime spent in conflict. In the aftermath, the consequences of victory are immediate and profound. Hostages are freed, the Serpent Dawn's network collapses, and the jungles slowly return to a deceptive calm. Yet the physical toll on Rambo is severe. His injuries are extensive, a testament to both the ferocity of the confrontation and the cumulative effect of decades of violence. Michael Coe insists on assisting him, refusing to allow the man who has become a symbol of courage to suffer alone. This moment signifies a reversal of roles, a transfer of care and respect that embodies the themes of legacy, mentorship, and chosen family. Rambo allows himself, perhaps for the first time, to rely on others, acknowledging that strength is not only measured by solitude but by the willingness to accept support. The narrative closes with a reflective tone, exploring the enduring consequences of war and the possibilities for redemption. Rambo, surrounded by those he has protected, begins a tentative journey toward healing, no longer solely defined by survival but by the impact of his choices on others. The story emphasizes that closure is not a singular event but a series of reconciliations with the past, with personal limitations, and with the connections forged across a lifetime. It underscores the enduring human capacity for resilience, the importance of honor and accountability, and the transformative power of compassion in a world often defined by conflict. The cinematic vision of this imagined chapter integrates expansive natural landscapes, intimate character moments, and meticulously choreographed action sequences to convey both spectacle and emotional depth. The score accentuates these elements, blending orchestral intensity with regional instrumentation to evoke atmosphere and cultural resonance. Practical effects heighten the realism of combat, while careful framing and lighting underscore the psychological and moral dimensions of the narrative. Every visual, every sound, every rhythm of pacing is designed to immerse the audience in a world where personal history, collective memory, and immediate danger converge. Throughout, the story maintains a thematic focus on the consequences of choices, the responsibilities inherited and assumed, and the possibility of finding meaning even in the aftermath of violence. It examines how individuals navigate moral complexity, how courage manifests in action and restraint, and how the bonds forged in adversity can redefine understanding of family and community. By the conclusion, the narrative presents not only the resolution of a mission but the nuanced transformation of a character who has spent a lifetime bearing the weight of survival, offering a meditation on legacy, redemption, and the enduring human spirit. The sun rises over the mountains bordering the dense jungle, casting long shafts of light through the thick canopy, illuminating the rain-soaked foliage and glinting on the remnants of weapons scattered from previous skirmishes. Rambo awakens in a temporary shelter, the night's rain having soaked his clothing, leaving him stiff and aching. His body is older now, each movement a negotiation between experience and the natural decay of time. Yet in the ache, there is clarity, a precise awareness of muscle, joint, and bone that only decades of survival can forge. He examines the surrounding terrain, mapping potential enemy approaches, noting weak points, and assessing escape routes. For him, the jungle is as much a weapon as it is a battlefield. Its sounds, scents, and textures convey information his companions cannot yet interpret. Even the smallest rustle or bird call carries meaning, a language learned only through acute observation and instinct honed over years. Min and Michael Coe stir nearby, preparing supplies, checking ammunition, and maintaining communication equipment with methodical diligence. The interplay between the trio reflects a balance of experience, youth, and local knowledge. Min moves with grace and urgency, her familiarity with the jungle environment allowing her to anticipate obstacles before they manifest. Michael, though young and untested in real combat, exhibits a determination forged through admiration for Rambo and the stories of his father. He represents both hope and continuity, a living reminder of the values passed down from one generation of soldiers to the next. Briggs coordinates from a safe distance, providing strategic oversight and intelligence analysis, her voice calm yet authoritative over encrypted channels. Together, the group forms a fragile ecosystem of trust, skill, and mutual reliance, each member contributing uniquely to the mission's success. Their approach to the Serpent Dawn's secondary outposts is deliberate and calculated. Rambo employs diversionary tactics, utilizing the natural environment to mislead and disorient enemy patrols. They move silently through undergrowth thickened by rain, avoiding areas marked by fresh footprints or signs of recent surveillance. Rambo's movements are precise, each step measured to reduce noise and visibility. They employ improvised traps, leveraging branches, vines, and locally sourced materials to create early warning systems and immobilize enemies without direct confrontation. This approach minimizes risk to the hostages and demonstrates Rambo's preference for efficiency and effectiveness over brute force alone. In the jungle, patience becomes a weapon, and timing dictates survival. As the team navigates deeper into enemy territory, Rambo experiences the subtle psychological warfare inherent in prolonged operations. The jungle itself seems alive, its ever-present sounds amplifying tension, echoing past traumas, and reflecting the internal state of each operative. Rambo's mind cycles through memories of previous missions, of friends lost to ambush, of moments where hesitation cost lives. The jungle is not merely a backdrop, it is an active participant in the narrative, shaping decisions, influencing perception, and reflecting the persistent presence of danger. This constant awareness reinforces the film's thematic exploration of trauma, vigilance, and the enduring imprint of combat on the psyche. The discovery of an abandoned Serpent Dawn supply camp provides both tactical advantage and sobering insight into the syndicate's operations. Among crates of weapons and rations, Rambo finds documents detailing the chain of command, movement schedules, and locations of captured hostages. The information confirms the presence of Michael Coe and others within the central stronghold, and it reveals the organization's broader objectives, destabilizing regional governments, orchestrating conflicts, and leveraging international hostages for propaganda and political manipulation. This intelligence reframes the mission, highlighting not only the immediate rescue imperative but also the potential for global consequences should Thura succeed. Rambo's focus sharpens, understanding that each decision carries exponential weight. Their infiltration of the Serpent Dawn's primary compound is a delicate orchestration of timing, stealth, and tactical improvisation. Rambo coordinates entry points, identifies choke points, and neutralizes sentries with precision. Each movement is a calculated risk, balancing speed with stealth. The team advances through a maze of corridors, tunnels, and guard posts, encountering both human and environmental hazards. Water-filled trenches, hidden spike traps, and improvised barricades challenge their progress, testing endurance, skill, and resolve. Rambo demonstrates not only mastery of combat but also adaptability, improvising solutions under pressure while maintaining strategic clarity. As they progress, the human cost of Thura's operations becomes apparent. Hostages are confined in squalid conditions, their physical and psychological suffering visible in the haunted expressions and weakened forms of those rescued. Rambo's interactions with the prisoners are quiet but profound. He reassures them, offers guidance, and fosters hope, his presence a stabilizing force amid chaos. Michael Coe's reunion with Rambo is layered with emotion, respect, relief, and the weight of inherited expectation converge as the young man begins to understand the magnitude of the rescue and the legacy of sacrifice it represents. The narrative emphasizes the human dimension of conflict, portraying both the resilience of the oppressed and the ethical responsibilities of those who intervene. The confrontation with Cayenne Thura escalates with visceral intensity. The compound becomes a crucible of violence and strategy, with the environment amplifying the stakes. Rambo and Thura engage in close-quarters combat, utilizing both improvised and conventional weapons, blending physical prowess with tactical cunning. Thura embodies calculated cruelty and authoritarian control, exploiting fear and obedience as instruments of power. Rambo counters with experience, intuition, and moral clarity, each maneuver reflecting the balance between force and conscience. Their clash is not merely physical but symbolic, representing the ideological struggle between exploitation and protection, tyranny and responsibility. Emerging victorious but physically compromised, Rambo ensures the evacuation of hostages while contending with his injuries. The narrative captures the tension of survival, the interplay of vulnerability and resolve, and the ethical imperatives guiding action. Michael Coe and Min assist in extraction, illustrating the reciprocal nature of trust, loyalty, and intergenerational continuity. The journey back through the jungle, though less contested, is imbued with reflection, marking a transition from acute crisis to contemplation of consequences and legacy. Rambo's resilience is tested not only by residual physical trauma but by the emotional weight of the mission's toll. Upon returning to relative safety, Rambo experiences the subtle process of reintegration and acknowledgement. The hostages' families express gratitude, yet Rambo's satisfaction derives less from recognition and more from the assurance that lives were preserved and moral obligations honored. He observes the younger generation of soldiers preparing for deployment, aware that his actions have indirectly shaped their opportunities, understanding, and perspective. The narrative frames this as an extension of mentorship, legacy, and continuity, highlighting themes of intergenerational responsibility, the transmission of knowledge, and the moral imperatives inherited from those who came before. The closing sequences emphasize quiet reflection, environmental continuity, and psychological resolution. Rambo engages with the land, the animals, and the companions who have shared the journey, interpreting these interactions as both literal and symbolic acts of healing. He moves through landscapes that are simultaneously familiar and transformed by the events of the mission, recognizing that closure is not static but a dynamic process integrating experience, memory, and ongoing human connection. The cinematic treatment underscores this with extended tracking shots, naturalistic lighting, and ambient soundscapes, reinforcing immersion, atmosphere, and thematic resonance. Throughout the narrative, the film's stylistic elements reinforce psychological and emotional dimensions. Music, composed with orchestral gravitas and regional tonalities, mirrors narrative pacing, emphasizing tension, reflection, and catharsis. Practical effects maintain realism in combat sequences, heightening immersion while preserving narrative authenticity. Cinematography captures both micro-level human expressions and macro-level environmental context, juxtaposing the intimacy of personal struggle against the scale of natural and man-made challenges. Together, these elements create a cohesive aesthetic that supports the narrative's exploration of resilience, legacy, and the enduring impact of war. The thematic architecture remains consistent: redemption, ethical responsibility, and intergenerational continuity are interwoven with depictions of tactical skill, survival strategy, and human resilience. Rambo's journey is both external and internal, traversing physical terrain, confronting antagonistic forces, and negotiating the moral and psychological landscapes shaped by decades of conflict. The narrative establishes a complex interplay between action and reflection, survival and conscience, individual agency and collective consequence, presenting a layered meditation on the enduring human condition in contexts of extreme adversity. The following hours in the jungle are a testament to endurance, strategy, and psychological fortitude. Rambo, though slowed by age and the lingering pain of old injuries, moves with a deliberate, almost meditative precision. Each step is calculated, each breath controlled, and every sense alert to subtle changes in the environment. The interplay of light and shadow through the dense canopy, the rhythmic patter of rain on leaves, the occasional distant roar of wildlife, all of it forms a living map, conveying threats and opportunities alike. The jungle is not merely a backdrop, it is an active participant in the narrative, its presence shaping decisions, heightening tension, and reinforcing the emotional weight of isolation, responsibility, and survival. Min navigates this world with fluidity, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of the terrain that complements Rambo's seasoned tactical approach. Michael Coe, though inexperienced, absorbs lessons through observation, internalizing both strategy and the ethical weight of action in a war-torn environment. Their movement toward the heart of the Serpent Dawn's operations is punctuated by intermittent engagements with enemy patrols. Rambo orchestrates these encounters with precision, employing diversions, improvised traps, and the environment itself as a weapon. Small, calculated skirmishes allow the team to neutralize threats without compromising the overall mission, emphasizing strategic patience over brute force. Each encounter also serves a narrative purpose. The physical challenges mirror the internal struggles of Rambo and his companions, highlighting the psychological toll of combat, the moral ambiguities inherent in life and death decisions, and the resilience required to endure prolonged adversity. The team's cohesion is tested repeatedly, requiring trust, communication, and mutual reliance to navigate complex, high-stakes scenarios. The discovery of a secondary detention site provides both tactical advantage and moral clarity. Rambo observes the conditions of prisoners, noting the psychological and physical trauma inflicted by Thura's forces. The sight of these victims galvanizes the team, underscoring the stakes and reinforcing the urgency of their mission. Michael Coe, witnessing these horrors firsthand, begins to understand the complexity of heroism, the consequences of leadership, and the responsibility carried by those who intervene in crises. Aimin, too, is reminded of her personal motivations, her drive rooted not only in vengeance but in a deeply human desire to restore dignity and safety to those endangered by systemic violence. The team's infiltration of the main Serpent Dawn fortress demands both ingenuity and audacity. Rambo leverages his knowledge of guerrilla tactics, environmental manipulation, and psychological leverage to outmaneuver guards and anticipate countermeasures. They navigate tunnels, circumvent surveillance, and exploit structural vulnerabilities, all while maintaining situational awareness in an unfamiliar and hostile environment. The suspense of these sequences emphasizes the interplay between preparation, improvisation, and adaptive problem-solving. Each obstacle is both physical and symbolic, representing the layers of challenge inherent in confronting entrenched systems of power, cruelty, and manipulation. As the narrative progresses, the interpersonal dynamics among the team deepen. Rambo assumes a mentor-like role for Michael Coe, transmitting both tactical knowledge and ethical guidance. Aimin, as a local operative, provides cultural and contextual insight, bridging gaps between strategy and lived experience in the region. The collaboration highlights themes of intergenerational learning, the transmission of moral and practical knowledge, and the forging of alliances across differences of age, background, and experience. These relationships humanize the story, offering counterpoints to the relentless tension of action sequences and emphasizing the emotional resonance of courage, trust, and loyalty. The confrontation with Cayenne Thura represents the narrative's thematic and emotional apex. Thura, as antagonist, embodies authoritarian ambition, strategic cunning, and moral corruption. Rambo's engagement with him is both physical and philosophical, exploring the collision between unyielding cruelty and principled resilience. The duel integrates environmental elements, tactical improvisation, and psychological insight, reflecting Rambo's synthesis of experience, intuition, and moral clarity. The combat sequences are intense, visceral, and methodically choreographed, blending practical effects with cinematic design to convey both realism and narrative significance. Following the confrontation, the narrative shifts to themes of consequence, responsibility, and moral resolution. The rescue of hostages, including Michael Coe, is achieved at significant personal cost to Rambo. His injuries underscore the physical toll of decades of combat, while his psychological state reflects the enduring weight of trauma, duty, and ethical responsibility. The narrative emphasizes that victory is not unambiguous, the survival of others carries both relief and lingering emotional complexity. Michael Coe's insistence on assisting Rambo reinforces intergenerational reciprocity, highlighting the transmission of values, respect, and responsibility across experiences and contexts. The return journey through the jungle is both literal and symbolic. The team navigates the same terrain that previously represented danger, now transformed into a conduit for reflection, recovery, and ethical reckoning. The environmental continuity reinforces narrative cohesion, while the interactions among characters deepen the exploration of moral responsibility, mentorship, and human resilience. Rambo's engagement with natural elements, the companions who aid him, and the rescued hostages conveys layered meanings, reconciliation with the past, acknowledgement of interdependence, and acceptance of the enduring consequences of choices made under duress. The epilogue situates Rambo within a framework of reflection and potential closure. While his physical wounds remain, he experiences a form of psychological and emotional resolution. Observing the younger generation of soldiers preparing for deployment, witnessing rescued individuals reclaim agency, and engaging with those who have aided him, Rambo confronts the outcomes of his decisions and the legacies of his actions. The narrative emphasizes that closure is not defined by the absence of conflict but by the synthesis of experience, moral deliberation, and enduring human connection. From a cinematic perspective, the story integrates expansive visual storytelling with intimate character-focused sequences. Natural landscapes, practical effects, and choreographed action provide immersive realism, while cinematography accentuates psychological depth through lighting, framing, and environmental interaction. The score, blending orchestral resonance with regional instrumentation, underscores thematic and emotional dynamics, enhancing narrative tension, introspection, and catharsis. Sound design, pacing, and visual composition converge to create an integrated cinematic experience that conveys both spectacle and reflective nuance. Thematically, the narrative explores the interplay of resilience, legacy, ethical responsibility, and intergenerational continuity. Rambo's journey reflects the cumulative effects of trauma, the moral imperatives of intervention, and the human capacity for mentorship, courage, and empathy. The story examines the consequences of violence, the responsibilities of survival, and the possibility of redemption through deliberate action. Through rescue, combat, reflection, and relational dynamics, the narrative underscores the enduring human drive to protect, guide, and preserve, even in the most challenging circumstances. Throughout these sequences, the narrative maintains focus on balance, the tension between physical action and introspective reflection, between individual initiative and collaborative strategy, between the weight of past trauma and the imperative for present moral action. Each scene, confrontation, and interaction is crafted to reinforce thematic resonance while advancing plot and character development. The story emphasizes continuity across personal, environmental, and cultural dimensions, highlighting the interconnectedness of human experience, ethical decision-making, and survival within complex social and geopolitical contexts. Rambo's trajectory, from isolation to engaged agency, encapsulates the narrative arc. He begins as a solitary figure, shaped by experience, haunted by history, and reluctant to intervene. The inciting events compel action, revealing the intertwining of personal responsibility, relational ties, and moral imperative. Through mentorship, tactical leadership, and empathetic engagement, Rambo reasserts agency not only in achieving mission objectives but in shaping the ethical and practical outcomes for those around him. This dual focus on personal evolution and operational success provides narrative depth, emotional resonance, and thematic coherence. The story's resolution emphasizes the layered nature of victory. While physical threats are neutralized and hostages rescued, the narrative foregrounds psychological, ethical, and relational consequences. Rambo's recovery, reflection, and ongoing engagement with the next generation illustrate the enduring relevance of experience, the transmission of values, and the integration of personal history into present action. The narrative framework encourages contemplation of the broader implications of leadership, courage, and moral responsibility, reinforcing the story's depth beyond immediate action sequences. The jungle begins to thin as Rambo and his team approach the outskirts of the Serpent Dawn's primary stronghold. The canopy opens into broken clearings littered with remnants of past skirmishes, discarded weapons, burned-out vehicles, and signs of hurried fortifications. Each element tells a story of preparation, conflict, and human cost, and Rambo studies them with a mixture of tactical awareness and quiet reverence. Every footprint, every disturbed patch of earth is a potential clue, a signal of enemy movement, or a trap. His experience enables him to read the environment as an extension of his own senses, anticipating threats and adapting his strategy dynamically. He moves with deliberate caution, instructing Michael and Imin to trust instinct, to pause and observe, to synchronize breath with the rhythm of the terrain. Their success relies not on brute strength alone but on observation, patience, and the precise application of skill. Within the fortress, the complexity of Thura's network becomes apparent. Barricades, watchtowers, and reinforced checkpoints create layers of defense designed to funnel intruders into kill zones. The use of environmental traps, tripwires, hidden pits, and improvised explosive devices demonstrates Thura's tactical cunning and the depth of his preparation. Rambo studies the architecture, identifying weaknesses, alternate approaches, and potential opportunities for infiltration. The team moves with a blend of stealth and strategic aggression, neutralizing guards with silent efficiency, and manipulating environmental elements to gain advantage. Each successful maneuver reinforces the importance of foresight, adaptability, and collaboration, while simultaneously heightening narrative tension and emphasizing the stakes involved. Rambo's interactions with hostages along the way deepen the emotional resonance of the mission. Their fear, fatigue, and desperation are palpable, and his responses are measured, deliberate, and deeply human. He offers reassurance, guidance, and a sense of safety that extends beyond physical protection, demonstrating the psychological dimensions of leadership and protection. Michael Coe observes these interactions closely, internalizing lessons of courage, empathy, and ethical decision-making. Min provides complementary guidance, emphasizing cultural awareness, survival techniques, and the importance of maintaining composure under duress. Together, the team forms a microcosm of trust, mentorship, and shared responsibility, reflecting the narrative's thematic focus on relational dynamics and the transmission of knowledge across generations. The confrontation with Cayenne Thura is the narrative's emotional and tactical fulcrum. The duel is not only a clash of physical prowess but also an ideological confrontation. Thura embodies ambition, cruelty, and moral corruption, while Rambo represents principled resilience, strategic intelligence, and ethical responsibility. The combat is meticulously choreographed, blending hand-to-hand combat, improvised weaponry, and environmental manipulation. The storm-laden setting amplifies intensity, with rain, mud, and collapsing structures adding unpredictability and realism. Each action carries narrative weight, reinforcing themes of consequence, moral choice, and the human cost of conflict. Thura's defeat is both literal and symbolic, representing the triumph of disciplined experience and ethical clarity over unchecked aggression and self-interest. Post-conflict, the evacuation emphasizes practical challenges, ethical considerations, and relational dynamics. Hostages are organized, medical aid administered, and the return journey through the jungle is carefully coordinated to minimize risk. Rambo's injuries necessitate assistance, reinforcing the narrative theme that even the strongest individuals rely on community, trust, and reciprocity. Michael Coe and Min provide support, illustrating the intergenerational and cross-cultural transmission of responsibility and care. The journey back is imbued with reflection, gratitude, and emerging understanding of the broader consequences of their actions. The narrative juxtaposes the physical relief of mission success with the psychological and emotional work required to process trauma, loss, and resilience. Upon reaching a secure location, Rambo engages in contemplative sequences that underscore personal growth and thematic closure. He observes the recovered hostages interacting with their families, witnesses the emerging recovery of communities affected by Thura's oppression, and contemplates the broader implications of his intervention. The narrative emphasizes that heroism is multifaceted. It involves not only physical courage but also ethical judgment, mentorship, and the preservation of human dignity. These moments provide emotional resonance, highlight moral complexity, and situate Rambo's actions within a continuum of historical, personal, and cultural responsibility. Cinematic techniques reinforce the narrative's thematic depth. Wide-angle shots of the jungle convey both physical scale and metaphorical weight, emphasizing isolation, environmental dominance, and the interplay between human agency and natural forces. Close-ups capture subtle emotional expressions, highlighting internal conflict, empathy, and interpersonal connection. Lighting shifts, from harsh sunlight to storm-induced shadows, mirror narrative tension and emotional arcs. Sound design integrates natural jungle ambience with tactical cues, enhancing immersion while subtly signaling threat, relief, or reflection. The musical score combines orchestral gravitas with regional instruments, bridging Western cinematic tradition and Southeast Asian cultural texture, enhancing both narrative cohesion and emotional resonance. Production design underscores the contrast between natural and constructed environments. The jungle sequences convey authenticity through practical set construction, attention to local flora and terrain, and integration of environmental hazards into narrative strategy. Fortress interiors combine realism with strategic symbolism, reflecting Thura's authoritarian control and Rambo's methodical dismantling of obstacles. Attention to detail in props, weaponry, and tactical equipment enhances verisimilitude and supports narrative credibility. Each visual element, from costume to environmental interaction, contributes to the immersive storytelling, reinforcing the stakes, tension, and thematic significance of character action. The narrative's exploration of trauma, legacy, and ethical responsibility is further articulated through dialogue and interaction. Conversations between Rambo, Michael, and Imin reveal generational perspectives, differing cultural experiences, and the psychological dimensions of combat. Reflection on past missions, ethical dilemmas, and personal responsibility enriches character development while maintaining narrative tension. The textural layering of experience, emotion, and tactical engagement ensures that the story operates on multiple levels, balancing action with introspective depth and thematic complexity. Finally, the story concludes with Rambo observing the continuity of life beyond the immediate crisis. The younger generation of soldiers, the rescued hostages, and the communities affected by Thura's operations are all positioned as living extensions of the ethical and practical impact of Rambo's intervention. The narrative emphasizes resilience, mentorship, and moral continuity, illustrating that the consequences of action reverberate beyond immediate survival. Rambo's personal closure is nuanced, reflecting the synthesis of experience, ethical action, and relational accountability. The narrative framework, cinematic techniques, and character dynamics collectively articulate a story of redemption, resilience, and the enduring human capacity for responsibility, courage, and connection across generations. The following days in the jungle are a careful negotiation between vigilance, strategy, and recovery. Rambo's body aches from wounds inflicted during the fortress confrontation, yet he moves with deliberate efficiency, testing his limits while maintaining awareness of every sound, movement, and shadow. The rain-soaked terrain is slippery, uneven, and treacherous, demanding precision, balance, and foresight. Each step through mud-slicked paths or across fallen logs is a negotiation with potential danger. The jungle itself seems sentient, its presence a constant reminder that the environment is both ally and adversary. The ambient sounds, the distant calls of birds, the rustle of unseen animals, the dripping of water through dense foliage, signal both opportunity and risk. Rambo interprets these cues instinctively, moving in harmony with the rhythms of nature, a skill honed over decades of surviving in hostile terrain. Imin takes point in navigating the more intricate parts of the jungle, leading the group through hidden trails known only to locals. Her understanding of water sources, wildlife patterns, and subtle terrain markers allows the team to conserve energy, avoid ambush, and anticipate potential hazards. Michael Coe follows closely, absorbing lessons in observation, patience, and stealth. Every decision Rambo makes becomes a teaching moment, blending tactical instruction with ethical reflection. He emphasizes that survival is inseparable from awareness, discipline, and moral consideration, instilling in Michael an understanding that courage is defined as much by restraint and thoughtfulness as by physical action. Along their path, they encounter evidence of Thura's lingering influence, traps not yet sprung, makeshift hideouts, and evidence of small-scale patrols. These encounters heighten tension, forcing the team to adapt rapidly. Rambo evaluates each threat, determining whether to neutralize it immediately, bypass it strategically, or manipulate it to their advantage. In one tense sequence, they discover a partially hidden camp containing supplies and records. Rambo deciphers their content, uncovering intelligence on remaining loyalists, weapon caches, and communication lines. The discovery expands the operational scope, providing both opportunity and ethical challenge, how to disrupt the network without causing unintended civilian harm. This sequence emphasizes Rambo's dual mastery of tactical execution and moral judgment. The interpersonal dynamics of the team continue to deepen under the stress of the environment and the mission stakes. Michael Coe grows increasingly confident, his actions reflecting an integration of Rambo's experience and his own emerging instincts. Imin's local knowledge ensures operational efficiency while grounding the group culturally and contextually. Rambo's mentorship is both direct and subtle, combining instruction, modeling behavior, and strategic patience. The narrative emphasizes that effective leadership integrates skill, empathy, and foresight, and that heroism is inseparable from ethical responsibility and relational awareness. As they approach the outer perimeter of the secondary stronghold, Rambo designs an intricate plan for infiltration. Natural features, dense thickets, fallen trees, and hidden water channels, are leveraged as cover, allowing the team to bypass heavily guarded areas. Rambo orchestrates the sequence of movements with precision, integrating traps, distractions, and timing to minimize direct confrontation while maximizing control. The team rehearses each step mentally, aligning movements with environmental cues, synchronized breathing, and predictive analysis of enemy behavior. This section emphasizes both intellectual and physical engagement, demonstrating the depth of Rambo's strategic mastery and reinforcing the narrative's tension and realism. Inside the stronghold, Rambo and his companions navigate labyrinthine corridors, encountering small but intense confrontations with guards and automated defenses. Each skirmish is depicted with tactical clarity, illustrating the blend of improvisation and planning required in high-stakes operations. Rambo demonstrates an acute ability to anticipate enemy reactions, employing decoys, environmental traps, and rapid decision-making. The narrative balances physical intensity with psychological stakes, highlighting the tension between immediate threat management and long-term mission objectives. These sequences underscore the narrative's commitment to both realism and thematic resonance, emphasizing consequence, responsibility, and adaptive skill. The liberation of hostages represents both operational success and moral culmination. Each rescue is depicted with attention to psychological detail, fear, hope, and human fragility are woven into the physical process of extraction. Rambo provides guidance and reassurance, Michael Coe applies emerging skills in support and logistics, and Imin facilitates navigation and communication. The narrative conveys that the act of saving lives is simultaneously tactical, ethical, and emotional, reinforcing the story's thematic exploration of heroism, responsibility, and relational integrity. Each hostage recovered amplifies both narrative tension and emotional payoff. The climactic confrontation with remaining loyalists and the final defensive measures of Thura's remnants are structured to integrate environment, strategy, and character development. Rambo's coordination of team movements, his use of natural and improvised resources, and his moral decision-making highlight the integration of experience, ethical judgment, and tactical ingenuity. The sequence demonstrates that effective action under extreme pressure relies on both physical skill and psychological insight. The narrative emphasizes adaptability, foresight, and the enduring relevance of experience in confronting both immediate threats and systemic challenges. The journey back from the mission site is depicted as a blend of relief, reflection, and psychological processing. Rambo observes the landscape altered by both natural forces and the consequences of the conflict, reflecting on the impact of intervention, the weight of survival, and the enduring legacy of decisions made in moments of crisis. Michael Coe and Imin support Rambo, demonstrating the themes of intergenerational learning, mentorship, and the reciprocal nature of loyalty and care. The narrative underscores that the resolution of conflict is not merely a matter of physical success but also involves processing trauma, ethical reconciliation, and relational continuity. Returning to a secure location, Rambo engages in reflective sequences that integrate personal, moral, and operational closure. He observes the hostages reunited with their families, communities beginning to recover, and the younger generation of soldiers preparing for future engagements. These observations provide narrative continuity, linking the mission's immediate outcomes with broader ethical and social consequences. The narrative emphasizes that the hero's work extends beyond the battlefield, encompassing mentorship, legacy, and the creation of conditions that allow others to thrive and learn from prior experiences. Cinematic elements reinforce narrative depth throughout these sequences. Wide shots capture environmental scale and isolation, close-ups emphasize psychological and emotional nuance, and lighting shifts mirror both tension and relief. Sound design integrates environmental cues, tactical action, and musical motifs to heighten immersion and narrative resonance. The score, blending orchestral and regional instrumentation, underscores themes of resilience, ethical responsibility, and human continuity. Production design emphasizes realism in terrain, set construction, and tactical props, ensuring that visual elements reinforce both story credibility and thematic symbolism. Thematic coherence is maintained across narrative, character, and environmental dimensions. Rambo's journey embodies the intersection of tactical mastery, ethical responsibility, and relational continuity. The story explores the long-term consequences of violence, the transmission of knowledge and values across generations, and the capacity for moral and emotional growth even in extreme circumstances. Heroism is depicted not as unreflective action but as informed, intentional engagement with both immediate and systemic challenges. The narrative emphasizes the interdependence of physical skill, psychological resilience, and ethical judgment in shaping meaningful outcomes. The narrative concludes with a meditation on legacy, continuity, and human resilience. Rambo's recovery, mentorship, and observation of future generations illustrate the ongoing impact of informed, ethical action. The story emphasizes that survival, success, and moral integrity are intertwined, and that the decisions of one individual can reverberate across communities, cultures, and generations. Through reflection, engagement, and relational accountability, the narrative positions Rambo as both an operative and a moral agent, underscoring the enduring relevance of experience, courage, and ethical commitment in a complex and challenging world. Rambo sits atop a ridge overlooking the recovering village below, his silhouette framed by the fading amber light of sunset. The jungle stretches endlessly behind him, a living testament to both danger and endurance. He watches as Michael Coe interacts with the freed hostages, helping to distribute water, tend to injuries, and provide reassurance. Each gesture embodies lessons learned, reflecting the practical and moral guidance imparted during the mission. Imin organizes the local villagers, coordinating the repair of damaged structures and facilitating communication with nearby communities. The trio functions as a cohesive unit, a synthesis of skill, experience, and emerging leadership. In these quiet moments, the narrative emphasizes the long-term consequences of action, highlighting the interplay between heroism, responsibility, and communal resilience. Even as the immediate threat has been neutralized, the story examines the lingering psychological weight of combat. Rambo experiences recurring flashbacks, echoes of previous conflicts, and the emotional resonance of lives lost over decades of warfare. These moments are interwoven with the present, illustrating how past experience shapes perception, decision-making, and moral reflection. The narrative frames trauma as both burden and teacher, providing insight, resilience, and ethical grounding for the choices made under duress. Michael Coe observes and internalizes these lessons, recognizing that courage is inseparable from ethical awareness and that leadership requires both strategic skill and emotional intelligence. The journey to process the aftermath is punctuated by small but significant acts of repair and care. Rambo assists in fortifying shelters, constructing basic sanitation measures, and helping villagers reclaim their agricultural fields. Each action, though modest, represents the tangible extension of moral responsibility into practical outcomes. The narrative emphasizes that heroism is not confined to combat but manifests through sustained engagement with human needs, ethical deliberation, and the creation of conditions for community stability and growth. Rambo's presence serves as both a stabilizing force and a symbolic embodiment of commitment, reinforcing themes of accountability, mentorship, and ethical continuity. Cinematic techniques in these sequences highlight both narrative and thematic nuance. Long tracking shots follow characters as they move through the restored landscape, emphasizing scale, continuity, and relational interaction. Close-ups capture expressions of fatigue, relief, determination, and quiet pride, humanizing the action and connecting audience empathy to character experience. Ambient soundscapes, birdsong, wind, rustling leaves, create a sense of immersive realism, grounding the narrative in a tangible environmental context. Music underscores the emotional beats, alternating between subtle motifs during reflective moments and swelling orchestral passages to signify resolution and moral clarity. The narrative revisits the central relationship between Rambo and Michael Coe, portraying it as a microcosm of intergenerational mentorship. Michael's increasing independence, ethical reasoning, and tactical acumen are depicted as a direct result of Rambo's guidance, yet his actions also reflect the assimilation of personal judgment and moral courage. This dynamic reinforces the story's focus on legacy, continuity, and the transmission of knowledge across temporal and cultural boundaries. Min's role complements this dynamic, offering context, local knowledge, and moral support, highlighting the importance of diverse perspectives in achieving effective, ethically sound action. In one particularly reflective sequence, Rambo engages with the natural environment itself, observing a river swollen from recent rains and the growth of vegetation disrupted and restored by the passage of both human and environmental forces. The scene is framed to emphasize the cyclical nature of life, the persistence of renewal, and the interconnection between human action and natural consequence. This sequence serves as a visual metaphor for the broader thematic arcs of the narrative: resilience, ethical engagement, and the capacity for recovery and growth after periods of intense disruption. As the story moves towards symbolic closure, Rambo oversees the training of local militia and self-defense units, imparting both tactical knowledge and ethical instruction. These scenes underscore the theme that sustainability of safety and security requires empowerment, education, and ethical consideration, not mere intervention. Rambo's mentorship is nuanced, blending practical instruction with reflection on the moral responsibilities inherent in leadership. Michael co-participates actively, bridging generational experience and emerging perspective, ensuring the continuity of learned values and strategic acumen. The closing cinematic sequences emphasize both spectacle and reflection. Panoramic shots of the jungle at dawn convey beauty, scale, and a sense of ongoing life, while interspersed close-ups of Rambo, Michael, and Min capture the human dimension of endurance, resilience, and connection. The music, a blend of orchestral and regional motifs, underscores narrative resolution while maintaining emotional resonance. Sound design integrates environmental continuity with the lingering echoes of past conflicts, creating a layered auditory experience that mirrors the complexity of the narrative's thematic structure. The final confrontation with internal moral reckoning is subtle yet powerful. Rambo contemplates decades of engagement with violence, ethical dilemmas, and personal sacrifice. The narrative portrays these moments with visual metaphors: the rising sun illuminating scars, rivers reflecting both clarity and turbulence, and foliage whispering in the wind as a symbol of continuity. These sequences provide closure not through action but through reflection, allowing the audience to appreciate the psychological, ethical, and emotional resolution alongside the physical and tactical success. Themes of legacy, mentorship, and intergenerational continuity are reinforced in the story's epilogue. Rambo observes young villagers and soldiers integrating lessons of survival, ethical engagement, and tactical skill. Michael emerges as a capable, thoughtful leader, blending learned expertise with personal judgment. Min continues to provide cultural guidance and ethical oversight. Together, they represent a continuum of responsibility, courage, and moral engagement, ensuring that the impact of Rambo's actions reverberates meaningfully into the future. This thematic closure emphasizes that heroism is enduring, relational, and ethically grounded, extending beyond immediate survival to shape societies, communities, and individuals. Cinematic elements in the epilogue emphasize continuity and reflection. Lighting transitions from warm, soft dawn to natural daylight, reinforcing themes of renewal and progression. Camera movements are slow and deliberate, tracking human interaction with the environment, emphasizing relational dynamics and the consequences of action. Sound design integrates natural ambience with subtle thematic motifs, reinforcing both narrative closure and emotional resonance. The combined effect of these elements ensures that the audience experiences not only the resolution of plot but also the layered implications of moral, psychological, and relational growth. The narrative, through its integration of action, reflection, mentorship, and ethical consideration, underscores that Rambo's journey is as much about internal development as external heroism. His experiences illustrate the interplay between trauma and resilience, skill and ethical responsibility, mentorship and legacy. The story's attention to both tangible outcomes and psychological nuance provides depth, emphasizing that survival and heroism are inseparable from moral engagement and relational continuity. Each scene, from combat to reflection, reinforces the thematic through-line: courage, skill, and ethical clarity combine to create meaningful impact. Production design further reinforces thematic depth. Jungle sets are constructed with attention to ecological accuracy, environmental interaction, and tactical plausibility. Fortress interiors are designed to reflect strategic complexity, moral corruption, and the psychological weight of authoritarian control. Costuming, props, and weaponry are meticulously curated to enhance realism while supporting narrative themes. Visual contrasts between natural, open landscapes and confined, oppressive spaces underscore narrative tension and ethical stakes. Cinematography and lighting choices enhance the juxtaposition of vulnerability and power, reflection and action, isolation and community. Through these sequences, the narrative emphasizes the interdependence of tactical skill, ethical judgment, and relational engagement. Rambo's success is not measured solely by the defeat of adversaries or the rescue of hostages but by the sustainable impact on individuals, communities, and the next generation. Michael K.O.'s growth, the empowerment of local communities, and the establishment of enduring mentorship relationships exemplify this holistic understanding of heroism. The story asserts that true heroism integrates practical effectiveness with ethical reflection, empathy, and legacy. Finally, the narrative concludes with Rambo observing the horizon, a symbolic representation of continuity, opportunity, and reflection. The environment, once a crucible of danger, now embodies resilience and renewal. The camera lingers on small, meaningful details: the glint of sunlight on water, the gentle sway of trees, and the expressions of those whose lives have been touched by action, mentorship, and ethical courage. The story closes on a contemplative note, emphasizing that human experience is continuous, that decisions reverberate across time, and that the measure of heroism is reflected not only in immediate outcomes but in the sustained moral, relational, and communal impact of those decisions. The following weeks after the mission are depicted as a period of slow, deliberate reintegration, both for Rambo and the communities he has aided. The jungle, once a battlefield, becomes a space of measured recovery, a living reminder that life persists beyond conflict. Villagers work alongside Michael Coe and I-Min to repair infrastructure, cultivate fields, and re-establish lines of communication with nearby settlements. Rambo observes quietly, occasionally offering guidance but largely allowing the younger generation to apply the lessons learned. His presence is a stabilizing force, providing reassurance and continuity without overshadowing the agency of those around him. This sequence underscores the narrative's emphasis on sustainable impact, ethical responsibility, and the empowerment of others as the true measure of heroism. The narrative also examines the psychological aftermath of conflict for the primary characters. Rambo, despite physical resilience, contends with persistent trauma, recurring flashbacks, and moments of self-reflection. His interactions with Michael Coe become informal debriefing sessions, where strategy, ethical considerations, and emotional experiences are discussed openly. Michael's questions and observations force Rambo to articulate lessons in morality, decision-making, and the long-term consequences of combat. These dialogues are nuanced, reflecting the narrative's focus on mentorship, intergenerational learning, and the transmission of ethical and tactical knowledge. Cinematic sequences emphasize environmental continuity and thematic resonance. Long tracking shots of restored villages, thriving crops, and flowing rivers illustrate the narrative arc from conflict to recovery. Close-ups capture the subtle nuances of human interaction, expressions of relief, gratitude, and cautious optimism. Lighting shifts subtly from the dramatic contrasts of storm-laden combat to soft, warm hues of dawn and early day, reinforcing narrative transition and thematic closure. Ambient sound design integrates natural elements, wind through leaves, water movement, birdsong, intertwined with subtle musical motifs that echo previous tension, creating a cohesive auditory experience linking past and present. Rambo engages with the natural environment in reflective sequences, moving along rivers, observing wildlife, and noting the resilience of the jungle itself. These moments provide metaphorical context, framing human action within the broader continuity of life. Water symbolizes both renewal and the passage of time, while flora reflects regrowth and endurance. The cinematic framing reinforces these themes through careful composition, depth of field, and perspective, situating Rambo as both observer and participant in the ongoing life of the environment. This visual storytelling deepens audience engagement with narrative themes of resilience, recovery, and interconnectedness. A key sequence involves Rambo training local militia in survival, tactical awareness, and ethical engagement. These sessions are structured to emphasize both practical skill and moral judgment. Michael Coe takes an active role, demonstrating leadership growth and the application of lessons learned during the mission. Min provides critical cultural and ethical context, ensuring that tactical knowledge is applied responsibly within the local environment. These sequences highlight the narrative's focus on mentorship, continuity, and empowerment, reinforcing that sustainable security requires informed, morally conscious action rather than reliance on a singular heroic figure. The story explores intergenerational and cross-cultural dynamics extensively. Rambo's guidance is informed by decades of experience. Michael Coe represents emerging potential and youthful perspective, and Min grounds action in cultural and regional expertise. Their interactions emphasize the importance of collaboration, mutual respect, and the ethical transmission of knowledge. These relational dynamics are further highlighted through cinematic techniques such as parallel editing, which juxtaposes mentorship sessions with reflections on past combat, reinforcing thematic continuity between action and reflection. In preparation for symbolic closure, Rambo engages in personal rituals that signify reconciliation with past trauma and acknowledgement of ethical responsibility. Scenes of him tending to horses, observing wildlife, and interacting with the environment convey quiet resilience and moral contemplation. These sequences, though subtle in action, are rich in emotional and thematic weight, underscoring the narrative's commitment to psychological depth and moral nuance. The camera lingers on details, water dripping from leaves, sunlight filtering through the canopy, the patient movements of animals, to reinforce the interconnectedness of human, environmental, and ethical narratives. Cinematic techniques emphasize continuity, reflection, and emotional resonance in the final sequences. Wide shots capture the scale of the jungle and restored villages, framing human activity within a broader ecological and cultural context. Close-ups highlight expressions of resilience, gratitude, and contemplation. Lighting shifts from muted morning tones to warmer midday light, symbolizing the transition from conflict to resolution. Sound design integrates environmental ambience with musical motifs, echoing previous narrative tension and providing auditory cohesion. Together, these elements create a sense of narrative and emotional closure that reinforces thematic arcs of mentorship, resilience, and moral responsibility. The epilogue integrates layered reflections on legacy, survival, and continuity. Rambo observes Michael Coe leading a training exercise, demonstrating integration of tactical skill, ethical reasoning, and leadership confidence. Villagers work alongside young trainees, embodying the narrative's emphasis on communal empowerment and sustainable recovery. Min coordinates logistical support and ensures ethical engagement with local resources. These sequences reinforce the story's assertion that heroism extends beyond immediate action into long-term moral and social impact, emphasizing the interconnectedness of skill, ethical responsibility, and relational continuity. Symbolic closure is achieved through sequences that juxtapose environmental renewal with human recovery. Flowing rivers, regrown vegetation, and thriving communities serve as visual metaphors for resilience, continuity, and ethical stewardship. Rambo's reflection on these elements, combined with observational focus on Michael Coe and Min, provides both personal and thematic resolution. The narrative frames survival, mentorship, and ethical action as enduring processes rather than isolated events, reinforcing the story's meditation on legacy, consequence, and intergenerational impact. Production design in these final sequences emphasizes realism, continuity, and symbolic resonance. Set construction reflects the dual themes of recovery and resilience, integrating environmental authenticity with practical narrative needs. Costume and props are consistent with both combat and post-conflict recovery phases, illustrating the passage of time and the ongoing consequences of previous actions. Visual contrasts between natural vibrancy and structural repair highlight narrative themes of regeneration and human engagement. Cinematography and lighting reinforce these contrasts, balancing intimate character focus with expansive environmental context to enhance both narrative clarity and emotional impact. The narrative's attention to sound and music reinforces thematic coherence. Environmental sounds, wind through trees, water flow, wildlife, anchor sequences in realism while evoking emotional continuity. Musical motifs evolve from tense, percussive arrangements during combat to orchestral, reflective, and regionally inspired compositions during recovery and mentorship sequences. This auditory evolution parallels character development and thematic progression, ensuring that the audience experiences both narrative and emotional arcs cohesively. Sound design emphasizes subtlety and layering, reinforcing the psychological and ethical dimensions of the story. Rambo's final reflections provide both personal and thematic closure. He contemplates the arc of his life, the ethical and tactical lessons imparted to Michael Coe, and the broader consequences of action within complex social, cultural, and environmental systems. His observation of human and environmental resilience underscores the narrative's assertion that heroism is integrally connected to ethical responsibility, mentorship, and continuity. The narrative frames closure not as finality but as integration, the synthesis of past experience, present action, and future impact. The post-mission sequences deepen Rambo's engagement with the environment, illustrating his understanding that survival extends beyond combat into stewardship and ethical interaction with nature. He guides Michael Coe and I-Min through mapping local resources, identifying safe zones, and understanding seasonal changes that impact both human activity and wildlife behavior. Each lesson is grounded in practical survival, but layered with ethical and strategic insight, emphasizing that responsible engagement with the environment is inseparable from human resilience. The narrative emphasizes the reciprocity between human agency and ecological context, framing Rambo's expertise as both technical and moral, and underscoring the interconnectedness of skill, ethics, and survival. As the team organizes the communities affected by Thura's operations, subtle interpersonal dynamics emerge that reinforce thematic depth. Rambo's mentorship of Michael Coe continues, focusing not only on tactical skill but also on ethical reasoning, leadership judgment, and the management of moral dilemmas under pressure. Michael increasingly exercises independent judgment, applying lessons learned while incorporating personal intuition. I-Min mediates culturally nuanced challenges, ensuring that actions are respectful, effective, and contextually appropriate. This triangulation of expertise, ethics, and cultural awareness reinforces the story's emphasis on collaboration, mentorship, and intergenerational continuity. The film's cinematography in these sequences balances expansive environmental shots with intimate character-driven visuals. Wide-angle framing captures the scale of post-conflict recovery, juxtaposing human effort against the lush, persistent jungle. Close-ups emphasize nuanced expressions of resilience, introspection, and ethical deliberation. Tracking shots follow characters navigating both natural and constructed spaces, illustrating the interplay between human agency and environmental complexity. Lighting subtly evolves, shifting from soft morning tones to warmer afternoon hues, reflecting both physical and emotional transitions from conflict toward renewal. Sound design integrates layered environmental and narrative cues. Reports of distant chaos. Natural elements, rustling leaves, flowing water, distant wildlife, provide auditory context, grounding scenes in realism while conveying continuity. Subtle musical motifs underscore character arcs and thematic resonance, reflective piano passages during mentorship sessions, orchestral swells accompanying successful rescues, and regional instrumentation evoking cultural specificity and environmental integration. Dialogue is captured with clarity, emphasizing ethical deliberation and relational nuance, ensuring that audience engagement encompasses both emotional and intellectual dimensions. Rambo oversees training exercises designed to empower local militia and youth. These sequences highlight the integration of tactical instruction with moral guidance, illustrating that sustainable security requires both skill and ethical consciousness. Michael Coe actively participates, demonstrating leadership development and applying lessons from prior engagement. Min facilitates ethical and cultural context, emphasizing respect for local traditions and environmental stewardship. These scenes reinforce the narrative's broader themes: mentorship, legacy, and the diffusion of knowledge across generations, cultures, and contexts. The narrative interweaves reflective sequences in which Rambo observes wildlife, rivers, and reforested areas, drawing parallels between natural resilience and human recovery. Scenes of flowing water, regrowth, and animal behavior serve as symbolic touchstones for themes of renewal, endurance, and ethical stewardship. Cinematography emphasizes depth of field and perspective, allowing audiences to interpret visual metaphors while remaining immersed in the realism of the environment. These sequences provide contemplative counterpoints to action-heavy moments, balancing spectacle with introspection and reinforcing the story's philosophical depth. Cultural and regional authenticity is maintained through meticulous production design. Local architecture, environmental textures, clothing, and tools are rendered with attention to both aesthetic realism and narrative functionality. Tactical props are designed to reflect authentic guerrilla and survival methodologies while supporting cinematic clarity. The juxtaposition of natural landscapes with constructed village elements highlights the interplay between human ingenuity and environmental integration, emphasizing thematic continuity of resilience, ethical action, and sustainability. The epilogue portrays Rambo in reflective engagement with both human and environmental elements, observing the restored villages and thriving ecosystems. Michael Coe's leadership role is emphasized, bridging generational knowledge with emergent capability. Min continues to provide guidance and cultural oversight. Together, the trio exemplifies the ongoing impact of mentorship, ethical action, and collaborative problem-solving. The narrative underscores that heroism and responsibility extend beyond immediate crises, shaping communities, ecosystems, and the next generation of leaders. The film concludes with layered symbolic sequences: rivers reflecting sunlight, foliage swaying in gentle wind, children observing training exercises, and Rambo standing contemplatively atop a ridge. These images combine to convey thematic closure, resilience, ethical continuity, and the integration of past experience with future potential. Cinematic techniques, tracking shots, environmental sound integration, and gradual lighting transitions reinforce both visual and emotional closure, ensuring audience immersion and narrative satisfaction. The story's resolution emphasizes reflection, legacy, and moral continuity, leaving viewers with a sense of completion tempered by ongoing narrative resonance. Throughout, the narrative maintains a delicate balance between action-driven sequences, psychological exploration, and ethical reflection. Rambo's journey encompasses both external conflict and internal reckoning, exploring themes of trauma, resilience, mentorship, and moral responsibility. The story foregrounds the interconnectedness of human action, environmental context, and intergenerational legacy, positioning heroism as an ethically informed, relationally grounded, and strategically executed continuum. Cinematic, musical, and production design elements consistently reinforce these thematic arcs, ensuring coherence and depth across narrative, visual, and auditory dimensions. The story continues to emphasize the relationship between human resilience and environmental integration. Rambo, Michael Coe, and Min undertake patrols through the jungle to ensure that remaining pockets of Thura's loyalists do not disrupt the fragile post-conflict equilibrium. Each patrol is carefully planned, combining observation, stealth, and environmental awareness. Rambo instructs Michael on reading subtle signs, disturbed foliage, faint tracks, and shifts in animal behavior that indicate human presence. These sequences emphasize the narrative's attention to skill transmission, ethical engagement, and the delicate balance between vigilance and respect for the natural world. The jungle is portrayed not only as a setting but as a living participant in the story, shaping decisions, revealing risks, and underscoring the consequences of action and inaction. While conducting these patrols, the team encounters isolated survivors, villagers who were displaced or hidden during Thura's operations. The narrative explores their psychological and emotional states, highlighting trauma, fear, and a cautious hope for safety. Rambo's interactions with them are both tactical and compassionate. He provides guidance, ensures protection, and models ethical decision-making in practice. Michael Coe begins to understand that true leadership requires empathy and moral clarity as much as skill, learning to navigate situations where the right choice may be difficult and consequences unpredictable. Min contributes cultural knowledge, bridging understanding between Rambo, Michael, and local communities, emphasizing that effective action must be contextually informed. Cinematography continues to reinforce thematic resonance. Wide establishing shots depict the scale of the jungle, juxtaposed with close-ups of intimate human interactions. The contrast conveys both the physical isolation of the characters and the emotional intensity of their engagements. Tracking shots following patrols through dense foliage create immersive tension, allowing viewers to sense the uncertainty and danger inherent in these operations. Lighting alternates between soft natural sunlight filtering through the canopy and shadowed areas within dense thickets, symbolizing both opportunity and threat, as well as reflecting the psychological complexity of navigating post-conflict spaces. The film integrates symbolic motifs through recurring environmental and visual cues. Flowing rivers symbolize continuity, cleansing, and the passage of time. Regrowth in previously damaged forested areas mirrors human recovery and resilience. The movement of wildlife, observed by Rambo and the team, reflects natural balance and interconnectedness, reinforcing thematic exploration of human-environment relationships. These motifs are captured through careful cinematography, slow pans, deep focus, and dynamic composition, ensuring that symbolism is visually integrated without disrupting narrative flow. Training sequences are elaborated with meticulous attention to choreography, demonstrating both physical skill and ethical instruction. Rambo instructs villagers and young recruits in basic self-defense, strategic observation, and environmental navigation. Exercises simulate real-world challenges while emphasizing restraint, awareness, and ethical judgment. Michael Coe takes an increasingly prominent role, demonstrating leadership growth and the application of tactical knowledge tempered by moral reasoning. Min provides situational context, ensuring that tactical engagement remains culturally sensitive and socially responsible. These sequences reinforce the narrative's focus on mentorship, sustainability, and the transmission of knowledge across generations and cultures. In reflective interludes, Rambo revisits sites of previous conflict, observing signs of recovery and renewal. Scenes depict the rebuilding of infrastructure, re-establishment of agricultural activity, and gradual reintegration of displaced communities. Cinematography emphasizes the juxtaposition of scars left by conflict with emergent signs of life, illustrating the narrative's exploration of resilience, consequence, and ethical responsibility. These sequences are accompanied by subtle musical motifs that echo earlier tension but transition into reflective, harmonious arrangements, reinforcing the thematic progression from chaos to recovery. The narrative continues to examine psychological complexity. Rambo processes the moral implications of decisions made under duress, considering both immediate outcomes and long-term consequences. Michael Coe reflects on lessons learned, integrating ethical reasoning with tactical experience. Min mediates cultural understanding and local perspective, ensuring that emerging leadership and ethical application are contextually grounded. Dialogue is crafted to reinforce thematic depth, emphasizing responsibility, relational continuity, and the importance of morally informed action in complex environments. Cinematic techniques throughout emphasize immersion and thematic layering. Ambient soundscapes integrate the subtleties of natural environments, rustling leaves, distant water flow, bird calls, with diegetic sounds of human activity, providing both realism and narrative continuity. Musical scoring blends orchestral textures with regional instrumentation, highlighting the interplay between tension, reflection, and ethical engagement. Camera movements, tracking, panning, and slow zooms, align with narrative pacing, accentuating suspense, relational dynamics, and reflective moments. Production design reflects narrative evolution, emphasizing continuity, realism, and symbolic resonance. Villages are rendered with attention to environmental integration, structural repair, and cultural authenticity. Props, tools, and clothing reflect the progression from conflict to recovery. Environmental manipulation, such as cleared paths, reinforced shelters, and resource management areas, illustrates practical and narrative outcomes of Rambo's intervention. Visual composition reinforces themes of regeneration, human-environment interaction, and ethical responsibility. The narrative culminates in sequences emphasizing continuity, mentorship, and legacy. Michael Coe is shown leading exercises, applying tactical skill, and integrating ethical reflection. Villagers actively participate, demonstrating empowered agency and intergenerational knowledge transfer. Rambo observes, offering guidance as needed but allowing autonomy to flourish. Imin coordinates logistical and cultural oversight, ensuring actions remain contextually appropriate and ethically sound. These sequences solidify the story's thematic assertion that heroism, survival, and ethical action extend beyond immediate intervention into long-term societal and ecological impact. Symbolic imagery underscores narrative closure. Flowing water, re-emerging foliage, and thriving communities represent renewal, resilience, and ethical stewardship. Cinematography emphasizes depth, perspective, and relational framing, capturing both environmental scale and intimate human moments. Musical and sound design support this closure, blending reflective orchestration with natural environmental cues, creating an immersive, emotionally resonant conclusion. The narrative emphasizes that recovery, mentorship, and moral clarity are continuous processes, requiring sustained engagement and ethical vigilance. The story's final sequences depict Rambo reflecting on his personal and moral journey. Observing the next generation of leaders, witnessing thriving communities, and engaging with Michael Coe and Imin, he acknowledges both the weight of past experiences and the potential of future impact. The narrative situates him as both witness and participant, illustrating the integration of experience, moral judgment, and relational continuity. Closure is achieved not through finality but through sustained connection, ethical reflection, and recognition of enduring responsibility. The story continues with Rambo guiding Michael Coe and Imin on detailed reconnaissance missions, emphasizing the nuanced reading of both terrain and human behavior. Each mission blends tactical precision with ethical consideration, highlighting that effective action requires situational awareness, moral judgment, and collaboration. Rambo teaches Michael to interpret subtle environmental cues, broken branches, displaced soil, or disturbed wildlife, that may indicate human presence. These sequences underscore the narrative's focus on the integration of experience, observation, and ethical decision-making. The jungle is depicted as a living entity, both shaping and responding to human action, reinforcing the thematic interplay between environment and agency. Encounters with isolated survivors deepen the narrative's emotional resonance. Villagers, initially wary, gradually reveal their experiences, fears, and hopes. Rambo engages with them not merely as a protector but as a mentor, instilling trust and demonstrating ethical conduct. Michael Coe observes the delicate balance between tactical intervention and moral responsibility, learning that leadership is as much about empathy and cultural sensitivity as it is about skill. Imin's mediation ensures that interactions remain culturally informed and socially responsible, reinforcing the story's emphasis on cross-generational and cross-cultural knowledge transfer. Cinematography throughout these sequences continues to emphasize both scale and intimacy. Wide shots capture the vastness of the jungle, juxtaposed with intimate close-ups of human interaction, reflecting the tension between isolation and relational connection. Tracking shots follow patrols through dense foliage, creating immersive suspense while highlighting environmental complexity. Lighting contrasts, filtered sunlight through canopy layers and shadowed undergrowth, mirror narrative tension and moral ambiguity, visually reinforcing the stakes of each action. Symbolic motifs are carefully interwoven. Flowing water represents continuity, cleansing, and the passage of time, while regenerating flora symbolizes human resilience and recovery. The subtle movement of wildlife parallels human adaptation and vigilance, reinforcing themes of interdependence. Cinematic framing employs depth of field, perspective shifts, and deliberate pacing to allow audiences to engage both visually and metaphorically with the unfolding narrative. Training sequences for villagers and militia integrate physical skill, ethical reasoning, and environmental awareness. Rambo structures exercises to simulate real-world challenges while emphasizing restraint, observation, and moral judgment. Michael Coe demonstrates increasing autonomy, applying tactical skill with ethical consideration, signaling his emergence as a capable leader. Min provides cultural and situational context, ensuring that the transfer of knowledge respects local customs and promotes sustainable security. These sequences reinforce thematic arcs of mentorship, continuity, and responsible action across generations and cultures. Reflective sequences depict Rambo observing post-conflict recovery sites, emphasizing the contrast between prior destruction and emergent vitality. Repaired structures, restored fields, and flowing rivers visually narrate the themes of resilience, consequence, and ethical engagement. Subtle musical motifs transition from tension to reflective harmony, reinforcing narrative evolution from conflict to renewal. These sequences balance action-driven and contemplative moments, maintaining audience engagement while deepening thematic resonance. The narrative explores psychological complexity and ethical deliberation. Rambo reflects on past decisions, assessing both success and unintended consequences. Michael Coe internalizes these lessons, learning that leadership requires moral clarity, empathy, and foresight. Min ensures that these reflections are culturally and contextually grounded. Dialogue is structured to highlight ethical reasoning, relational responsibility, and the integration of personal experience into broader strategic understanding. Cinematic techniques emphasize immersion and narrative layering. Environmental soundscapes, rustling leaves, water movement, wildlife calls, are combined with diegetic tactical sounds and subtle musical cues, creating depth and realism. Camera movements, including tracking, panning, and slow zooms, correspond with narrative pacing, accentuating suspense, reflection, and relational dynamics. Lighting evolves naturally with time of day, symbolizing narrative transitions and thematic progression. Production design reinforces thematic coherence and realism. Villages and post-conflict environments are depicted with attention to structural repair, environmental integration, and cultural authenticity. Props, tools, and attire reflect practical functionality while maintaining visual continuity. Environmental features, such as cleared paths, fortified shelters, and managed water sources, illustrate the tangible outcomes of intervention. Visual composition emphasizes regeneration, human-environment interaction, and ethical stewardship. The narrative builds toward closure with sequences emphasizing mentorship, leadership, and legacy. Michael Coe leads exercises, applying tactical and ethical knowledge independently. Villagers actively participate, demonstrating empowerment and intergenerational knowledge transfer. Rambo observes, intervening selectively, while Min ensures cultural and ethical integrity. These sequences solidify the story's thematic message: heroism is sustained, relational, and morally informed. Symbolic imagery underscores thematic closure. Flowing rivers, thriving vegetation, and engaged communities represent continuity, resilience, and ethical stewardship. Cinematography captures both environmental scale and intimate human interaction, reinforcing relational and moral connections. Sound design and musical scoring support emotional and narrative resolution, blending reflective motifs with ambient environmental cues. The story emphasizes that recovery, mentorship, and ethical action are continuous processes, extending beyond immediate crises. Rambo's final reflections highlight the integration of experience, moral judgment, and relational continuity. Observing future leaders, thriving communities, and restored ecosystems, he recognizes the ongoing impact of his actions. The narrative frames closure not as finality but as sustained ethical engagement and mentorship. Heroism is portrayed as relational, morally grounded, and strategically enacted, with long-term consequences for individuals, communities, and the environment. The narrative progresses with Rambo taking a more observational and strategic role as the post-conflict phase continues, emphasizing the enduring impact of mentorship and ethical engagement. He supervises reconstruction efforts, coordinates security patrols, and engages in dialogue with local leaders to ensure sustainable governance and safety. These sequences illustrate the integration of tactical expertise, ethical responsibility, and relational continuity. Rambo emphasizes that effective leadership is not measured solely by immediate victories but by the lasting stability and moral integrity of the communities he protects. Michael Coe increasingly assumes leadership in these operations, applying lessons of situational awareness, ethical reasoning, and environmental attunement, demonstrating growth into a capable and reflective successor. Min continues to provide critical cultural context, mediating between external strategic imperatives and local customs. She ensures that rebuilding efforts and security initiatives respect indigenous practices, highlighting the narrative's emphasis on cross-cultural understanding and the ethical application of knowledge. The interactions among Rambo, Michael Coe, and Min serve as a microcosm of mentorship, ethical reasoning, and cultural literacy, reinforcing the story's thematic exploration of relational dynamics, responsibility, and intergenerational knowledge transfer. These sequences highlight the necessity of collaboration, empathy, and moral discernment in leadership and post-conflict reconstruction. Cinematography in these sequences emphasizes both scope and intimacy. Wide aerial shots reveal the restored villages nestled within the expansive jungle, visually framing human resilience against the backdrop of nature. Close-ups focus on interpersonal interactions, Rambo observing young trainees, Michael Coe instructing militia, and villagers tending fields, capturing subtle expressions of hope, determination, and cautious optimism. Lighting evolves from warm morning tones to vibrant afternoon hues, symbolizing both renewal and continuity. Tracking shots following patrols or training exercises immerse viewers in the dynamic interplay between human agency and environmental context. Sound design integrates natural environmental cues with diegetic action sounds and an evolving musical score. Birdsong, flowing water, and rustling leaves underscore the tranquility of recovery, while orchestral motifs weave in thematic continuity, recalling earlier tension while signaling resolution. Dialogue is captured with clarity, emphasizing ethical deliberation, mentorship, and relational learning. The layered auditory design enhances both immersion and thematic depth, reinforcing the narrative's balance between action, reflection, and moral consequence. Training and mentorship sequences are expanded to illustrate both tactical proficiency and ethical instruction. Villagers are trained in surveillance, basic defense, environmental navigation, and decision-making under pressure, emphasizing both practical skill and moral judgment. Michael Coe demonstrates autonomy, applying learned techniques with situational awareness and ethical consideration, signaling the maturation of his leadership capabilities. Min ensures that cultural and environmental context remains integral to each exercise, reinforcing the narrative's commitment to responsible, sustainable action. These sequences exemplify the story's broader thematic focus on continuity, empowerment, and intergenerational knowledge transfer. Reflective sequences show Rambo revisiting key locations of prior conflict, observing signs of regeneration in both human and environmental domains. Reconstructed structures, flourishing vegetation, and renewed water sources symbolize resilience, renewal, and continuity. Cinematic techniques, slow pans, depth of field, and deliberate composition, allow audiences to engage with both literal and metaphorical layers of the narrative. Musical scoring transitions from tense, percussive elements to harmonious, reflective arrangements, reinforcing the progression from conflict to recovery and ethical resolution. Psychological and moral exploration continues to be central. Rambo reflects on decisions made under extreme duress, assessing consequences for both human life and environmental impact. Michael Coe engages in similar contemplation, integrating tactical learning with ethical reflection. Min mediates cultural understanding, ensuring decisions and interventions remain contextually grounded and ethically sound. Dialogue reinforces the integration of experience, reflection, and relational responsibility, highlighting that leadership requires both intellectual and emotional acuity. Production design maintains narrative and thematic coherence. Village reconstruction emphasizes environmental integration, structural authenticity, and cultural accuracy. Props, tools, and clothing reflect the passage of time, transitioning from combat functionality to post-conflict practicality. Environmental modifications, fortified shelters, cleared paths, managed water sources, visually communicate human adaptation and the tangible outcomes of responsible intervention. Visual composition consistently reinforces themes of regeneration, ethical engagement, and continuity between human and environmental systems. Cinematic sequences underscore mentorship and relational dynamics. Michael Coe is depicted leading exercises, instructing villagers, and making independent ethical decisions. Rambo observes selectively, offering guidance when necessary, emphasizing the balance between supervision and autonomy. Min provides cultural and contextual oversight, ensuring ethical integrity. These sequences solidify the story's assertion that heroism extends beyond immediate action into long-term influence on communities, environment, and successive generations of leaders. Symbolism in visual storytelling is pervasive. Flowing rivers, regrowing vegetation, and thriving communities mirror human resilience, moral recovery, and ethical stewardship. Cinematography captures environmental vastness and intimate human interaction, creating visual metaphors for relational and moral interconnectedness. Sound design integrates environmental cues with reflective musical scoring, reinforcing narrative closure and emotional resonance. The narrative emphasizes that recovery, mentorship, and ethical action are ongoing processes requiring sustained engagement, foresight, and moral vigilance. The story's final sequences focus on legacy, reflection, and continuity. Rambo observes Michael Coe leading training exercises, villagers managing resources, and ecosystems demonstrating natural recovery. These observations highlight the enduring impact of mentorship, ethical decision-making, and relational engagement. Rambo's contemplation situates him as both witness and participant, reinforcing the narrative's themes of intergenerational knowledge transfer, moral responsibility, and environmental stewardship. Closure is achieved not through finality but through integration of past experience, present action, and future potential. Cinematic closure emphasizes visual and emotional synthesis. Panoramic shots capture the scale of recovered villages and surrounding jungle, conveying both achievement and continuity. Close-ups focus on expressions of contemplation, determination, and gratitude. Lighting evolves from soft morning tones to warm afternoon, symbolizing renewal and hope. Sound design integrates ambient natural elements with reflective musical motifs, harmonizing with the visual narrative. Together, these elements create immersive narrative closure, reinforcing thematic depth and moral resonance. Rambo's concluding reflections articulate the integration of tactical mastery, ethical responsibility, and relational engagement. Observing communities and emerging leaders, he acknowledges the long-term consequences of his actions. Michael Coe exemplifies the successful transmission of both skill and ethical reasoning. Min ensures cultural and contextual appropriateness. The narrative asserts that heroism is measured not only by immediate outcomes but by the enduring influence on human, social, and environmental systems. The post-mission narrative expands to include long-term strategic and ethical engagement with the environment and communities. Rambo, Michael Coe, and Min initiate coordinated patrols to ensure residual threats are neutralized without imposing unnecessary harm. Each patrol is executed with meticulous attention to environmental cues, ethical judgment, and tactical precision. Rambo teaches Michael to interpret subtle indicators, disturbed foliage, animal behavior shifts, and faint human tracks, highlighting the integration of observation, reasoning, and morality. The jungle functions as both ally and adversary, with cinematic framing emphasizing its scale, density, and dynamic interplay with human action. Tracking shots and deep focus lenses immerse the audience in the tension of navigating an unpredictable environment, blending visual intensity with thematic resonance. Interactions with remaining isolated villagers underscore the psychological and ethical complexity of post-conflict engagement. Survivors display fear, trauma, and tentative hope, requiring Rambo to balance protection with empowerment. Michael Coe observes and participates, learning that leadership encompasses empathy, moral discernment, and situational flexibility. IMIN mediates culturally appropriate interactions, ensuring that external interventions respect local norms and support sustainable community development. These sequences reinforce the story's focus on mentorship, ethical responsibility, and relational continuity, illustrating how leadership extends beyond tactical competence into moral and social stewardship. Cinematography alternates between sweeping environmental panoramas and intimate character-focused framing, highlighting both the scale of recovery and the nuanced interpersonal dynamics. Wide shots situate human activity within the vast jungle, emphasizing resilience against the backdrop of nature. Close-ups capture expressions of concentration, hope, and reflection, deepening audience connection with character arcs. Lighting subtly shifts from early morning tones to soft midday illumination, symbolizing renewal, continuity, and the passage from conflict to stability. Sound design integrates diegetic jungle ambience, rustling leaves, flowing water, distant wildlife, with thematic musical motifs that evolve from tension to reflective harmony, reinforcing narrative progression. Training sequences are elaborated with precise choreography, blending practical survival skills with ethical instruction. Villagers learn observation, strategic movement, basic defense, and decision-making under pressure. Michael Coe demonstrates growing autonomy, applying Rambo's lessons with situational and moral discernment. IMIN ensures that cultural, environmental, and ethical considerations are embedded in each exercise, reinforcing the narrative's commitment to sustainable, contextually informed action. Cinematic framing emphasizes relational dynamics during these sequences, highlighting mentorship, intergenerational knowledge transfer, and community empowerment. Reflective interludes depict Rambo revisiting key conflict sites, observing environmental and human recovery. Reconstructed structures, thriving vegetation, and restored waterways function as visual metaphors for resilience, renewal, and ethical stewardship. Slow pans, layered depth of field, and deliberate visual composition encourage audience reflection on both literal and symbolic dimensions of recovery. Musical transitions from intense, percussive themes to calm, harmonious motifs reinforce the narrative's progression from tension to resolution, blending auditory and visual storytelling. Psychological exploration remains central. Rambo assesses previous actions, reflecting on moral consequences and long-term effects. Michael Coe internalizes lessons in ethical leadership, combining tactical knowledge with moral awareness. IMIN mediates cultural and contextual understanding, ensuring interventions are socially responsible. Dialogue emphasizes the integration of experience, reflection, and ethical judgment, illustrating that effective leadership requires intellectual, emotional, and moral acuity. Production design supports thematic continuity and realism. Villages and natural environments are depicted with authenticity, illustrating structural repair, environmental integration, and cultural accuracy. Props, clothing, and tools reflect transition from combat to post-conflict practicality. Environmental modifications, fortified shelters, cleared paths, and water management systems, visually communicate human adaptation and ethical action. Composition reinforces themes of regeneration, ethical engagement, and interdependence between humans and the natural world. Mentorship and relational dynamics are highlighted through sequences of independent leadership by Michael Coe. Rambo observes selectively, intervening when necessary, demonstrating balanced guidance and the promotion of autonomy. IMIN provides cultural and ethical oversight. These sequences reinforce the story's central message: heroism and leadership extend beyond immediate action into long-term influence on communities, ecosystems, and succeeding generations. Symbolic imagery permeates narrative closure. Flowing rivers, flourishing vegetation, and engaged communities signify continuity, resilience, and ethical stewardship. Cinematography captures relational and environmental layers, emphasizing human interdependence with natural systems. Sound design and musical scoring integrate environmental textures with reflective motifs, achieving immersive narrative resolution. The story portrays recovery, mentorship, and ethical action as ongoing processes requiring continued vigilance and engagement. The epilogue emphasizes legacy, reflection, and continuity. Rambo observes Michael Coe leading training exercises, villagers managing resources, and ecosystems demonstrating natural resilience. These observations highlight mentorship, ethical reasoning, and relational stewardship as central to sustainable heroism. Rambo is portrayed as both witness and participant, integrating past experiences with ongoing moral responsibility. Closure is achieved through the synthesis of action, reflection, and future-oriented engagement. Cinematic closure utilizes visual and emotional synthesis. Panoramic shots depict the scale of recovery, while intimate close-ups focus on expressions of contemplation, determination, and hope. Lighting transitions from soft morning illumination to warm afternoon light, symbolizing renewal and continuity. Sound design blends ambient natural cues with reflective musical motifs, reinforcing thematic resolution. The narrative concludes with an immersive, emotionally resonant synthesis of action, ethics, and legacy. Rambo's final reflections articulate the integration of tactical mastery, ethical responsibility, and relational engagement. He observes the results of mentorship, community recovery, and environmental stewardship, acknowledging the lasting consequences of action. Michael Coe exemplifies successful knowledge and ethical transmission. Imin ensures cultural integrity and ethical oversight. The narrative asserts that heroism encompasses immediate success, moral discernment, and enduring impact across human and ecological systems.